Om Sai Ram. Welcome everyone to this Choose Your Own speaker session. For our next speaker, we have Auntie Padma Ayyagari. Auntie Padma began her journey with Swami as a child when she attended Balvikas, currently known as the Sri Sathya Sai Education. She has been part of this organization since 1993 and has held the role of a National Education Coordinator of Australia from the year 2007 to 2010. Auntie Padma lives in Albury in New South Wales. Over to you, Auntie, to share your presentation on how to make decisions that support unity. Om Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, I offer my humble pranams at the lotus feet of our Master and Divine Consciousness in the form of Sri Sathya Sai Baba and pray that he speak through me. I would also like to offer my gratitude to the Sai organization for giving me this opportunity to share a few thoughts and collectively raise our awareness on the topic of how to make decisions that support unity. I've been in the Sai organization for quite some time now, and I have held several office bearer roles, including the role of National Education Coordinator for 4 years. When I was approached to talk about this topic, I started to seriously ponder on the question how to make decisions that support unity. And also on the conference theme itself, unity is divinity, purity is enlightenment. There are a lot of potent words in these phrases, and I really wanted to unpack and define these words before even thinking of the how. So this actually led me to revisit the charter of Sai organization to get an understanding of what our mission for Sai organization is. And it took me quite by surprise because the charter has quite clearly laid out the what is of unity and purity and how to of divinity and enlightenment. The charter, as we all know, says the most fundamental object of this organization as laid down by Bhagwan is to awaken in man the awareness of the divinity inherent in him by propagating through practice and example the basic principles of Satya, Dharma, Shanti, Prema and Ahimsa set by Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. The charter continues to say, to experience this divinity, mere environment and circumstances outside are not sufficient, but a change in the minds of men is necessary. The activities of the organization are only a means to the spiritual progress in this direction, and which progress will ultimately enable everyone to enjoy inner peace, notwithstanding the stresses and strains, the frustrations and sorrows, the defeats and successes, the ups and downs of life. The charter further says, also to establish oneness of all thoughts, that the Sri Sathya Sai organizations are taking existence. So if I understand correctly, the charter is actually defining the life purpose of an individual, and the mission of the organization itself is in assisting the individual achieving this purpose of taking birth, which is to awaken the inherent divinity. The charter also very clearly defines the why, what, and how of unity and purity. And of course, Swami gave thousands of discourses and wrote hundreds of pages on these very same words. So, unpacking these statements from the charter, what is the goal for the individual? To awaken the inherent divinity through change in the mind. What is the goal of the organization? To provide activities as a means for the spiritual progress of an individual in this direction. Why does the organization need to do that? So ultimately everyone, all individuals, enjoy inner peace regardless of the stresses of life. How does the organization do that? By propagating through practice and example the role of 5 human values in establishing oneness of all thoughts. So that's the definitions given in the charter. without mentioning the words unity or purity, it actually gave us a blueprint of how to achieve unity that unveils divinity and leads to purity, which results in enlightenment. So my topic is how to make decisions that support unity. So I'll concentrate on that aspect only and will not go into purity and enlightenment part of the theme because there isn't enough time. So how does unity help us to achieve divinity? What does unity mean? And how can we make decisions that support unity? So before we explore the how, let's look at what is meant by unity and what are some of the obstacles that hinder this unity. After that, let's explore how to make decisions that support unity. So the dictionary definition for unity says, it is the state of different areas or groups being joined together to form a single country or organization. When there is unity, people are in agreement and act together for a particular purpose. And one more definition, the state or quality of being one. So different areas or groups joined together to form a single organization means proximity, meeting together. Are we united just because we meet once a week for bhajans or meet at annual events like this conference or undertake service activities together? Does unity mean proximity? Coming together for these events may have the appearance of unity, but true unity is much deeper than a weekly or an annual meetup. So when there is unity, people act together. Does this mean uniformity, doing the same things? We do same activities every time we meet. Does that mean we are united? No, we don't all have to be doing the same things to be united. The very definition of unity presupposes diversity at a physical, mental, and emotional level. We all have different gifts, skills that we bring together, showing how diverse we are. So unity does not mean uniformity. When there is unity, people act in agreement. That was another definition. Does this mean absence of conflict? No. We all know that we cannot avoid conflict and we can't settle for spiritual oneness by simply, trying to be nice to one another. So what is unity then? Unity is relationships, one in spirit. Unity is purpose, one in purpose. So we can understand this definition in principle. However, I'm sure you all agree when I say that we face obstacles in consistently living as one in spirit and journeying together one in purpose. So let's look at what some of those obstacles are which prevent us to live as one in spirit. So the biggest obstacle to living as one in spirit is our ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of our true nature, of who we truly are. Are we able to live with ourselves as one with our spirit? Do we not, separate our mind from the spirit and think that spirit is something that needs to be attained? Isn't that our quest? This ignorance, that spirit is something separate from us, is what creates this duality. And this is a product of a limited ego. So there are basically three ardent desires, or what's called ishanas, that hold us tightly in their clutches, and they form these obstacles for us to consistently live as one in spirit. These desires form the basis of all our thoughts, actions, and reactions. So what are they? Desire for progeny due to desire for pleasure, that is called putreshana. The second one is desire for wealth, possessions, that's called vitteshana. The third one is the desire to be known, to be recognized with our positioning in society, our status quo. In other words, name, fame, power. This is called lokeshana. So these three desires, they create the ideas of I and mine. The thinking, this is what I am, and these are my people, etc. They form the core of our ego, and we try to protect these ideas all our lives. As a result of that, it gives rise to the 6 inner enemies. We know what they are: lust, anger, greed, delusion, pride, and envy. And these six inner enemies, they form the knots of the heart, and they are most difficult to be broken. They limit us to this physical realm of experience, and they create a very strong sense of identity with the body and mind, and we become products of this limited ego. On top of that, we constantly judge the information we receive based on what is good or bad for us. We notice that good brings us happiness, reduces our misery, and preserves our identity, meaning our separateness from the world. I am a good person, I am a spiritual person, etc. These judgments, they form the core of the structures of ego: anger, doubt, fear, shame, aversion, family, race, conduct. These are the 8 passions, and they form the substructures of ego. How? We get angry at something or someone who brings misery to us. We doubt what is in front of us is good or bad. We fear the people that are unknown to us, who are different to us. We are ashamed of doing things we really want to do. We develop aversion to things we judge as bad. We form the idea of our family and try to do everything for them and protect that identity. We identify with our race and pronounce others as inferior or bad. We believe that we have to conform to the norms of conduct without questioning for fear of rejection or punishment. So these structures, they are the shackles that bind us, and they basically arise from our sense organs input, our vasanas, the tendencies of the mind that we have accumulated through our various births, and of course through our childhood and cultural conditioning. These together shape our view of the world. I'm sure we all have stories to tell around any one or all of these emotions and how they take over us in a split second. Take a simple example. I'll give my personal example, very simple one. I was trying to find a car park in a busy shopping center on Christmas Eve and had a near-miss accident because another car took my spot, which I found after much difficulty and time. What do you think my reaction was? Of course, anger. It rose through me as the heat of the summer. And I, ashamed to say, mouthed some expletives to myself and drove off rashly. I found a car park eventually, but I was still shaking with the rage for quite some time. Every time I see a packed car park now, it causes me anxiety as I immediately remember that incident. If I unpack this, I find that at the root of this anger was an unfulfilled expectation, which triggered the reaction. On the surface of it, it may look like losing the car park was the unfulfilled expectation, but there is another layer underneath it. I wanted to please my interstate family arriving for Christmas with good cooking. My desire for status quo, the name, the fame, that I'm a good cook and a good host, and I was running out of time. And the more that played in my mind, the more anxious I got, and I felt robbed of the chance because some fellow took my car park and created an obstacle for my happiness. Do I recognize these expectations? Of course not. Not immediately anyway. Instead of recognizing in that moment the expectations that drove me to the anger, and let that anger pass through me with full acceptance, I now create a story around that. And of course, I have to narrate it to all my family members. Each time I narrated how nearly I missed the accident, how it caused me the anxiety, and how insensitive the other person was in taking my car park. The story revolves around some of the components of this ego structure: anger, aversion, family, and the desire, lokeshana. And the story that confirms my identity as separate and distinct to the others gets etched deeper and deeper into my memory. So the result is that next time in a similar situation, I probably will continue the same pattern of reaction because I'm deeply entrenched in this body-mind identity, which is supported by that story, as well as the conditioning with which we are brought up from the word go. This is a minor example, But the same process goes with conflict arising from any situation. A deeply underlying unfulfilled expectation is the reason why the conflict arises. And our decision-making capacity stands on these desires. So, how are decisions made? Where are decisions made? Are they made in the brain, the mind, the memory, the ego? Our intellect or buddhi makes these decisions. But it depends whether we are exercising this buddhi properly. When exercised properly, this buddhi is called inner voice or conscience. And it is of supreme importance in our life's journey because conscience puts the desires in a proper place and destroys doubts in its decision-making process. Buddhi can grasp that which is beyond the grasp of the sense organs, and it is constantly guiding us if we pay attention to it. Swami says, follow the master. The master here is our conscience. It is only when we follow the dictates of our conscience we can reach the right destination. But buddhi can get covered by ahankara or ego sense and drives to make selfish decisions. We've seen this in Mahabharata when Duryodhana and Arjuna went to Krishna to ask for help with the war. Duryodhana's buddhi was so clouded with his sense of ego, his identification with the power of his body and mind, that he chose to ask for the army of Krishna. And we know the story. In my example, I was exercising a selfish intellect where fulfillment of my desire to be recognized as a good host was the only thing that mattered. Hence the reaction and the resulting story. So how do we overcome the obstacles created by the ego self and move towards living as one in spirit? The whole purpose of individual sadhana, spiritual sadhana, is to overcome this body-mind identification, become aware, and live in that awareness of who we truly are, the divine consciousness enclosed in this body and mind. We may intellectually understand this, but fail in putting it into practice consistently. Swami says, man is not making efforts to experience the principle of divinity, which is present in all in the form of love. Love is the true form of God. It is your foremost duty to recognize this eternal principle of love. What does he mean by not making efforts to experience divinity? Are the efforts of bhajan singing, service activities, study circles not enough? What more effort do we need to make to experience the principle of divinity? How do we cultivate a conscience and intellect that will help us realize who we truly are? Spirituality for an individual lies both on a vertical as well as a horizontal axis. Swami says, first, self-knowledge. I need to dig deep vertically to acquire self-knowledge, which is finding out who I truly am. The deeper we go within to connect with that, the closer we get to our true essence. In a discourse given in 1962, Swami said, keep undimmed before you the main goal, the task for which you have come into this school. Do not deviate from it. Whatever that attraction that tempts you to stray, do not deviate from it. Command the mind and regulate your conduct so that the goal is one. Roam about in the region of your own mind and understand its moods and mysteries. Do not dream of wandering in a foreign land before you become masters of your own kingdom. So here, when he says roaming in the region of our own minds and understanding means recognizing that every time I'm describing myself as a wife, a mother, a sister, a devotee, etc., I'm attaching a role identity next to the words I am, and let that role define and decide how I behave. Becoming masters of your own kingdom means understanding that I am not that role identity I play, and establish a correct relationship with myself. So how do I establish a correct relationship? Swami said, command the mind and regulate your conduct, which means telling myself that I am divine, residing in this sacred body and mind. I need to tolerate the body-mind vagaries and accept the limitations of the body-mind completely, which means no self-deprecating judgments, no harsh mind bashing over little things that I may or may not have done. It means complete and total acceptance of who I am, what I am, and how I am, with the knowledge that I am not the body and mind. So that means it's extending love towards myself, being compassionate towards myself. So what do I need to do to remain established in this correct relationship with myself? Swami in the same discourse said, I want you to drop old deep-rooted habits of purposeless talk, vanity, envy, and scandal mongering. We need to, in order to do that, we need to intensify our spiritual sadhana. So if we do meditation, we need to bring that into our moment-to-moment living and not just leave it as a sit-down exercise done once or twice a day. We need to dig deep with the mantra or the nama japa and repeat it constantly in every vacant moment. So that would help us drop the old deep-rooted habits of purposeless talk, vanity, envy, and scandal mongering because the mind is occupied. Not only that, we need to understand that our past memories and future imaginations, they keep us closely tied to these old deep-rooted habits. So what we need to understand is that the past memory or the future imagination can only happen in this present moment. Time is not linear, and mantra helps us in getting out of this binding nature of linear time and fixes our mind's attention in this present moment. As we dig deep vertically and our self-knowledge gets established in our true identity, we are inching closer to awakening the inherent divinity. Our decisions will increasingly be steered by a conscience guided with love because we love ourselves. We don't rush to make decisions spontaneously, nor will we avoid the responsibility of making decisions. We either rationally or intuitively make the decisions and may even invite other people's input. So these are some of the styles of decision making at an individual level. And whatever the style, decisions made in the present moment always support unity. But living with non-duality is actually a two-step process. We looked at the first step, which is recognizing and awakening the inherent divinity in ourselves first. Then we can work on developing the second step in the process of non-duality, which is seeing the divinity in others. This is the horizontal axis of the spiritual path, where in our quest to experience divinity with others or divinity in others, we work with others. Whether it's undertaking group service activities or in a workplace or in the community or in SSSIO organization. Decisions made in these settings generally are to achieve the purpose of an organization. So secular organizations tend to have perpetuation of their business as a mission. Providing goods and services will be the main mission, and the results of these goods and services benefit the shareholders. Whereas, if we compare that to SSSIO organization, assisting the shareholders or individuals achieve the purpose of taking birth, which is to awaken the inherent divinity, that is the mission. And the activities of the organization support to achieve that mission. So SSSIO organization can only perpetuate if it enables its members' achievement of life purpose. In other words, members are the business of SSSIO organization, not the activities. We, as individuals, join a spiritual organization for our own spiritual growth because the organization provides us a ground for disciplined sadhana, and this cannot be lost sight of. So if the mission or purpose of SSSIO organization is to assist individuals to manifest their divinity through its activities and enable individuals to enjoy inner peace and establish oneness of all thoughts, these are all from the charter, right? Then when we are making decisions, we need to weigh our decisions in only one crucible. Is this decision going to bring us all together united in that purpose? That is this decision going to enable the members to awaken their inherent divinity, enjoy inner peace, and establish oneness of all thoughts, or not? Simple as that. Organizational level decision making, generally at a secular organization level, has different style and has following characteristics. The style is different to the individual decision making. And what are the characteristics? Ambiguity prevails around decision making, as there is often only ambiguous information available. Decision making is a part of an ongoing longitudinal process, and decisions are made in a sequential manner. Commitment is more important than the judgmental accuracy of the decisions made. Incentives play an important role because both incentives and penalties have a long-lasting effect. Repeated decisions are made following the rules than by using pure information matching processes. That is more appropriate. Often, conflict is pervasive in organizational decision making. Power considerations, agenda settings, they determine the decisions rather than calculations that are based on the parameters of the decision itself. If we treat a spiritual organization like a secular organization, then the danger of lokeshana, which is our desire to be known and recognized, our positioning and status quo, our quest for name, fame, power, they can creep into the organizational decision-making processes, and this can lead to conflict. So to avoid this, we need to keep the purpose of Sai organization at the forefront of our minds, so decisions can be made with a completely unselfish conscience, a pure conscience. So what is the business of the Sai organization? I've said that a couple of times and I'll repeat it again. According to the charter, it is to enable individuals' spiritual growth through collective activities. And in that process, it needs to, or it can, empower members to unleash their creativity and talents. And the organization also need to cater for the optimal development of the inner needs of the next generation. So these are the objectives, right? That is the business of Sai organization. So we need to constantly keep pulling back our scattered awareness that deals with this external world into this one central reality of who we truly are. That is the individual sadhana. And then align it with the organizational purpose and mission of assisting other individuals awaken their own inherent divinity. And then create the activities that support that mission. And that is the collective sadhana. Then we will not be divided in our decision making, and there will be unity in our approach to decision making. I present here some ideas on the decision making process, especially when we are attempting to be inclusive of everyone and getting the job done as well. The key component of this process includes the guiding principle, one in spirit and one in purpose. Then the goal becomes unity, not unanimity. So the steps are, the process of decision making will need to be structured, making sure that the discussions are open and transparent. The discussion itself is held with love and humility, and it involves active listening with empathy, non-judgment, and also sharing any available information that facilitates that discussion. Ideas and solutions belong to the group. No names are recorded. Ensuring that group members speak only once until everyone is heard. This encourages a diversity of thought. Multiple concerns and information are shared and until the group is clear of the sense and the direction the decision is going or taking. The facilitator of this process will be serving the group rather than acting as a person in charge. The group as a whole is responsible for the decision, and the decision belongs to the group. Anyone disagreeing with the decision made as a group may have to step aside. Swami says, seeing unity in diversity is divinity and true spirituality. Study of scriptures, performing rituals, doing worship, they do not signify true spirituality. Recognizing the unity of the Atmic principle is true spirituality. When you realize this unity, you will earn divine grace. So our total acceptance of ourselves as we are gives us the capacity to totally accept the others. From that acceptance rises the expansive awareness, which is inclusive and unconditional and allows us to see the divinity only. So we are not held with these fleeting, changing, gripping adjectives that describe us. We will then be able to separate the action from the individuals and confidently able to say, I respect you, I love you, but I don't respect, love, like what is said, done, etc. Then the decisions that are made automatically support unity without much effort and earn divine grace. So to sum up, we make decisions in every waking moment of our lives. Every choice we make is determined by a decision we made, from mundane day-to-day activities to life-changing activities to attaining enlightenment. Living in unity is a decision. Living with purity is a decision. When our decisions are driven by our ego sense to satisfy the three desires, the desire for pleasure, the desire for wealth and possessions, the desire for name, fame, power, then we are bound to this world of separation and duality, and there will never be unity. If our decisions are driven by an unselfish conscience, then we are on the road to freedom. So we need to always have in the forefront of our minds that individual spiritual growth through collective activities is the business of Sai organization, and the activities of the organization should enable and empower members to unleash their creativity as well as cater for the inner needs of the next generation. Therefore, driven by an unselfish conscience, decisions made that completely enable us to achieve the organizational mission will support unity and bring us close together in our life's purpose of realizing and awakening our inherent divinity. Then unity is divinity becomes a living reality. Let us pray to Swami to empower us with this wisdom to realize this unity in diversity and travel together, one in spirit as well as one in purpose. Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you all. Om Sai Ram.
Thank you, Auntie Padma, for the insightful sharing on how to make decisions that support unity. You started by reminding us the true purpose of this organization and ultimately our lives, and defined the true meaning of unity. You then very practically took us through a personal conflict of missing out on a car park and how our desires, expectations, identity and ego prevent us from achieving unity. You emphasize the importance of how individual sadhana helps us overcome obstacles of this ego. And you finally highlighted the steps of decision-making as a group with the common goal of unity, purity and divinity. Thank you for your wisdom, Auntie, that you have shared with us today. We now have a few questions for you. The first one is, how do we tune into our inner voice, especially when we are surrounded by worldly distractions?
Inner voice is that which is perceiving, discerning, distilling, and communicating information that we cannot receive in any other way. In other words, our inner voice can also be called as conscience or intellect. And intellect plays a very crucial role in decision making. Whether we pay attention to it or not, we are constantly guided by that small whisper of the inner voice. And we need to train ourselves to hear that inner voice and trust it. The more we trust that little whisper, the louder it gets. When we listen to the answers that come from this space, we generally find satisfaction in our actions. So let's look at what inner voice actually is. A very mundane example. When I go for a second serving of the dessert or a piece of chocolate, ignoring that voice from within that is warning me, saying, don't eat that, your system will not agree with you, but I still go ahead and eat it, and I pay the price. I'm ignoring that cautious little voice which is right, and I end up paying the price. Similarly, when I need to sleep at a certain time so I can be productive in the morning, and yet I ignore the signs of tiredness or push my sleep to watch that late night TV show, I'm not listening to that small voice. So every time I ignore that little voice, the harder it gets to hear it. And of course, the worldly distractions, social media, work pressures, going from one thing to another without a break or pause in between, mind rushing along with it. We are so covered and engulfed with external noise, we just do not make time to listen to that voice guiding us through little things, let alone big decisions. So how do we cultivate that inner voice? When it first whispers, we need to listen to it and obey its command. That means, in that example, no sugar or no second helping of the dessert. It starts with small things like that. We need to be disciplined in our daily routines. It may sound boring, but this discipline, as in eating, sleeping, waking at the same time every day, day in, day out, regardless of weekends, that is important because we are bringing our body in alignment with our head that has the spiritual knowledge. And then it becomes easier to listen to this inner voice that keeps prompting. We need to create space and time. We need to give ourselves time to slow down. When we create more space between our thoughts, our inner voice has room to talk to us. So meditation every day, maybe twice a day, at the same time, same place. So you're training your mind to be in your control. The gaps between thoughts ever so slightly start to increase. And in these silent gaps, we can hear the voice. We can't hear our inner voice generally because our minds are crowded with stories of past and future, guilt and shame-riddled stories of what we have done or not done, and worry-ridden stories of how an imagined future will turn out to be or won't turn out to be. To make space in our minds, we need to get rid of these stories. And one exercise that works for me is journaling. There are many other ideas, but this one works for me. Pour your stories in there, in the journal. Little to big worries, anxieties, hopes, aspirations, doubts, judgments, whatever. You're not holding them in your body or in your head. They're out of the system. Write anything that comes to mind to get going, and usually by about the second or third page, you start to hear this practical wisdom coming out. And that is the inner voice. And it starts to give clear and concrete direction. I very highly recommend this practice. I've been doing this for the last 28 plus years, and it works. The other thing we could do is practice being in the flow, means being one-pointed. Multitasking, if we look at the latest research on it, it's overrated. And it is proven that it's not actually good for us, especially if we want to have a focused, attentive mind. So when the mind is one-pointed, we are in the flow. Means we are one with what we are doing. And this is incredibly therapeutic because it gives the mental space needed to focus on this one action. And that's how our inner voice starts to come through, because it's got room to move. Practicing deep listening is another tip, if you want. Listening without judgment and the impulse to respond when someone is actually speaking or haven't finished speaking. We jump in with our responses. Practicing listening to others deeply means we actually are listening to ourselves deeply. And this is what is precisely required to listen to our inner voice and receive that guidance. The more we do this, the stronger that voice gets, and we would be able to tell that difference when it is our mind speaking and when it is actually the inner voice speaking. Hope this was helpful.
Thank you, Auntie. It was almost like you could smell my baking and you watch my late night sessions. For the next question, can you please share a practical example of how to see divinity within others when there is a disagreement with the other party?
Seeing divinity within others and disagreement with the other party. Let's look at what disagreement is or how disagreement arises first. Disagreement with other party arises because we get attached to the role that we play in life, whether it be a wife, a mother, employee, office bearer, spiritual seeker, even the role of being, a Baba devotee. These role attachments give rise to expectations, and we look for validations within that roles that we play by others. I want to be validated as a good mother, a good devotee, a sincere seeker, an excellent office bearer, etc., etc. And these expectations, validations are all attached or linked to the three ishanas or desires that I spoke about earlier. Expectations arising out of the desires get firmly attached in our minds. We pigeonhole people into neat little compartments with a good story as its foundation, with strict boundaries around that story. If my child disobeyed me often, for example, or not successful as I want him to be, or failing in putting in 100% every time I look at my child, those stories are the ones that jump into my mind. In other words, putreshana, the first of the three desires, the desire for progeny to leave a legacy, that takes over. I would be looking and interacting with these neatly tucked story boundaries of who my child is. And my child doesn't appear to me as fresh and new and ever-changing, just like I am. The lokeshana, the desire for name, fame, power, success, etc., this is very subtle, and this subtly creeps into us. And it takes a stand, particularly when we are challenged. And the need to protect that rises strongly. So we forget that we are divine, let alone seeing the divinity in the other person. Our interaction with others will be based on our preconceived ideas determined by past behaviors, etc. Disagreements arise when what I think is right and does not match with what the others think is right. We approach each other with these ideas firmly placed in our mind because we forget the definition of unity, which is one in spirit, one in purpose. When I'm interacting with someone with a preconceived idea, then my buddhi, the intellect, gets clouded. That inner voice is not clear. Swami actually classifies buddhi as 4 types. One is swartha buddhi, where selfish intellect is the one that is predominant, where I'm only interested in my own welfare and fulfillment of my desires. The next one is swartha parartha buddhi, where I'm equally interested in my own welfare and that of my immediate family and friends, the close circle of people I interact with. The third one is parartha buddhi, where a person does not desire anything for themselves. In complete surrender to God, only desire held is the love of God. And this person with parartha buddhi believes that God is the indweller of all beings and desires for the welfare of the entire world. And the fourth one is niswartha buddhi, where the person with this intellect has absolutely no sense of I and mine. They have purified their hearts by giving up the feeling of the I, the body and mind, which is ego, and the feeling of mine, the attachment. So this purity of buddhi is what leads to enlightenment. So I guess the discerning question to ask of ourselves is, what type of intellect am I utilizing in making this decision? If I'm predominantly using swartha or swartha parartha buddhi, I neither remember I'm divine, and I certainly don't entertain the idea of divinity in the others, particularly when there are disagreements. Swami says, first understanding, then adjustment. So to understand the other person or people, first thing required is to stop taking everything personally, put aside our internal stories about others, and look at others with fresh new eyes as though we are interacting with them for the first time. Then we are open and non-judgmental of who they are and listen to them without feeling attacked. We need to learn to separate the actions of a person from the person. We can condemn the actions, no doubt, but never the person. So seeing in divinity, I believe, in others is directly proportional to how much I see the divinity within me. If I have not accepted that I'm divine encased in this body and mind, I certainly will not have that capacity to accept that others are divine. How judgmental and critical I am about myself reflects on how judgmental I become of others. How loving am I towards others is directly proportionate to how loving I am towards myself. So what practices are we undertaking? And with what conviction are we practicing to live with the knowledge that I'm divine? This question becomes crucial. And that is the first step, that conviction and that undertaking of a practice with full conviction. Through that comes the compassionate understanding and acceptance of others. Then we can exercise the Parartha Buddhi, that is complete surrender to God. We completely believe that God is the indweller of everyone, and our desire will be only for the welfare of the whole world. Again, I'll come back to the definition of unity: one in spirit, one in purpose.
And for the final question, how do you make decisions when there are differing opinions, especially when you are in a leadership role? Do you have any personal examples?
When I was the National Education Coordinator in the organization, I didn't have much opposition to what I proposed and carried out, to be truthful. At least not to my knowledge anyway, because, well, I guess living in a regional area is an advantage in that sense. I didn't have many people to interact face to face with. It was all done online. Anyway, I got the teachers to come together in preparing lesson plans using all the 7 teaching techniques for SSC for all age groups. Basically, I've designed the syllabus and allocated it to different regions, and teachers in each region would come together, prepare the lesson plan, which was edited and revised by me, and then once finalized, the lesson plan was circulated nationally to be used. At the beginning of the process, I had a few phone calls, I must say, objecting to this process, questioning the merit of it, etc. And it required convincing them about the merits of undertaking this exercise. And what were those merits? It became soon very evident for everyone involved in that process that not only were they creating a nationally uniform syllabus, but most importantly, it brought the teachers together in unity and used their collective knowledge creatively to come up with original lesson plans. I think the collegiality, the respect for senior teachers' knowledge amongst junior teachers, and how senior teachers embrace the junior teachers in imparting that wisdom through this collective activity, it actually empowered everyone and it unleashed their creativity as they strive to cater for the optimal development of the inner needs of SSC children, as I said, of all age groups, including group 4. This brought everyone united with one purpose, and that purpose was creating a purposeful direction to SSC and assisting individuals to develop their own spirituality. That was my aim, and that resonated with people. As I said in my talk, one in spirit and one in purpose. Working with unity to achieve a common purpose was the reason I believe I didn't face any differing opinions. If we keep in mind that, we are a spiritual organization and our business, as the charter suggests and gives us, is the individual spiritual growth. That is our business. Then decisions made in that light usually don't get any opposition or differing opinions. So we can't lose sight of what unity means. If we want true unity, then we all have to come together, one in spirit, one in purpose. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity again. Sairam.
Thank you, Auntie Padma. And once again, we would like to thank you for your time and wisdom and for sharing how to make decisions that support unity. Thank you for those who have chosen this Choose Your Own speaker session with Auntie Padma. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program. Om Shri Sai Ram.